What is the EB5 path? Why does it even exist?
Idea behind this green card is that it's for somebody to invest in the United States.
What kind of businesses are these, right? Like, are they construction? What kind of businesses?
Sporting arenas and things of that nature. Large-scale real estate developments is what I've often come across.
Somebody has $800,000 and they are able to, maybe they got a gift from their family.
Such a vast array of lawful sources of funds, from accumulated savings from lawful employment earnings, selling off a property.
What are the steps involved here, right? Like, so once they approach a licensed attorney,
I can't overstate the importance of consulting with an attorney, because I do think
Hi, Michael. Such a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to the Smart Immigrant Podcast. How are you doing? How have you been lately? And what kind of cases have you been, processing lately?
so. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And to answer your question, things are going well. Thank God. We are focusing on a variety of cases, from employment-based cases, investor cases, family cases like marriage or a child sponsoring their parent. So we're handling a vast array of cases at the moment.
Nice. I do see, a lot of your videos on YouTube as well. So I think that's a treasure trove of information and knowledge that people get from your videos. Thanks for doing that for the for the general immigrant community. I think that's very valuable. A lot of people have reached out to us saying that, hey, I watched Michael's video. He said this and this and this. Like, I found it useful, and that's when I took this step, etc., etc. So thanks for doing that. Just a personal note to you.
Well, thank you so much. It's our pleasure. It's my pleasure to do it, and I'm very happy, and I'm very touched when we receive feedback like that, where people mention that it's genuinely helpful to them. It is very rewarding. So thank you.
Yeah. You did mention that you also specialize in filing investor-based visas, right? So that's one of the things that I'd like to dive deep a little bit in today's podcast episode, mainly because there's not too much awareness about it, especially a lot of people. Yes, there is a lot of awareness about the EB2, the EB3, and these days, awareness is growing about the EB1 as well. The EB5 did have a little bit of awareness material coming out until lately, but then somehow, it is shrouded in this philosophy that this is only for rich people. You need like a few $100,000 to $1 million of investment, etc., etc. So I kind of want to dive a little deeper into it to understand a little more what kind of people is it for, what is the viability of it, what steps can people take, etc., etc. And if you can give some examples of people that you've served that have successfully gotten the EB5 as well. But let's go back and start off with, what is the EB5 path? Why does it even exist? Like, what's the philosophical purpose the United States has around even having a EB5 path?
Absolutely. So EB5 is an immigrant investor visa. And so basically what this means is it's an avenue for somebody to obtain lawful permanent residence, a green card, to the United States for themselves and their spouse and their unmarried children under 21 years old. And the basic requirements and the idea behind this green card is that it's for somebody to invest in the United States and create jobs for US workers. So the practical outcome of the EB5 program is that it benefits the US economy by bringing in investment funds, and it also benefits the economy in the sense that the program requirements themselves necessitate the creation of jobs. So in two ways, the US economy is benefited by the program. On one hand, encouraging investment into the United States, and on the other hand, it requires the creation of jobs for US workers.
Got it. So when you say requires the creation of jobs, is there a certain number of jobs it needs to create? And do these investments always need to flow into totally new businesses, or can they flow also into existing businesses? But then if they flow into existing businesses, how can the number of jobs be tied to that investment when there's like pre-existing investment already in it, et cetera, et cetera? So can you help clarify that a little bit?
Yes, so there's a lot of moving parts to the question, and in an effort to make sure that we want to be as clear as possible, but just as a disclaimer, you want to make sure this what we're going to discuss right now is we're discussing general information, and it's very important to understand that EB5 is extremely technical. It's so technical that only a small fraction of immigration lawyers handle EB5 cases. So if you're hearing something, I just want you to know that it's very possible that the potential for misconstruing information when we're talking about something so highly technical is very much a possibility. So for that reason, before taking any action on your particular case, you should make sure to consult with an EB5 attorney. Now, with that, why don't we even break it down a little bit further, and we'll talk about some of the requirements of EB5, and then we can talk about how this practically applies to various investment options. And hopefully we'll clarify that, but we'll build up to it as opposed to reverse engineering it. So EB5 requirements, we'll talk about some of the major ones, and then we'll go from there. So for one, you need to make an investment. And as far as the investment amount, there's two potential amounts. You either have to invest $800,000 or $1,050,000. Now, what differentiates which investment amount you are subject to is whether you are investing targeted employment area, TEA, or whether you're making an investment outside of a TEA. Now, specifically, in order to qualify for the reduced investment amount of investing in a TEA, your business, your EB5 business, must be principally doing business within a TEA. Now, if this sounds confusing, I'm gonna explain what it means. So basically, certain areas within the United States qualify as TEAs. These are areas that perhaps are experiencing economic hardship of some kind, and the EB5 regulations want to encourage investment in those areas. So, what do? They reduce the needed investment amount to qualify for EB5 if your investment is being made in one of those TEAs, one of those targeted employment areas. So, again, back to the first requirement, it's to make an investment. That investment amount under a standard EB5 is $1,050,000. Or if you're investing in a targeted employment area, the investment amount is $800,000. In addition to making the investment, you need to create jobs for 10 full-time jobs for US workers. Additionally, your investment funds must come from a lawful source. So, this is a very critical component of the EB5 program. You not only have to be able to document where the funds came from, and it has to be traceable to a lawful source. For example, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later in this video, but there's various forms of lawful sources of funds, for example, employment earnings, or perhaps you're selling a property or getting a gift from a family member. There's several potential lawful sources of funds that can be used for EB5. But again, it's important to note that the funds need to come from a lawful source, and you need to be able to trace those funds from the time they were lawfully obtained through the time that they're invested into the EB5 business, that an EB5 investment is made. Additionally, the funds need to be at risk, meaning that this can't all be theoretical investment that you plan to make at some point in the future. These funds need to actually be at risk. So those are some of the most critical requirements of the EB5 program. Now, to take it one step further, you might be wondering, what sort of a business can I invest in for EB5? Well, among the various options for EB5 investments, there are two major pathways. An individual can choose to make a direct investment, or they could make an investment in a regional center project. Now, a direct investment is what you would traditionally consider investing in a business. You go out and perhaps you start up a company, or you purchase an existing business, or something that resembles a traditional investment that you'd be used to in the understanding of investing in a business, buying a business, starting up a business. Now, a regional center investment is a little bit different. Regional centers are entities that are designated by USCIS, and these regional centers oftentimes sponsor various projects. Oftentimes, these are large scale real estate developments. For example, like a sporting arena or a resort of some kind. And if you're investing in a regional center, you would essentially be investing in one of those projects. Now, the benefit of investing in a regional center project is that, again, in the example of the direct investment, usually you are the one that's responsible for managing that business and ultimately ensuring the success of that business. Oftentimes, those responsibilities fall on your shoulders if you're making a direct investment. Whereas with a regional center investment, your active involvement in that business is far less than it would traditionally be under a direct investment. Usually, in the context of a regional center project, there is a managing member or a managing partnership there that is in charge of the major day to day duties of the business. And your responsibility is generally quite minimal. So for those that are seeking more of a passive role in the EB5 process with respect to the actual running of the business, the regional center route may be more favorable to you. So that's a high level overview, and we can from there go through specifics that you might have that you might be interested in exploring.
Yeah. So let's say now somebody has $800,000 and they are able to, maybe they got a gift from their family, a family member, or inheritance from their parents, whatever it may be. And let's assume that they are sitting somewhere internationally, not currently in the US. What are the steps involved here, right? Like, so once they approach a licensed attorney, what are the steps that they need to watch out for? Like, for example, in EB1A, we do have the 140 and the 485. There's like, it's a kind of like a two-step process. So how does that map to the EB5 path?
Sure, that's a great question. So we'll take it from the top. The first step in terms of actual filing of the case, it depends on how detailed you want to get. My first step is uh, consult with an attorney, but we won't go that granular. We'll go through the just actual practical immigration forms that are involved. But I say the importance of consulting with an attorney because people oftentimes will watch videos or gather information and they will determine that a particular immigration option is the suitable pathway for them. And then after consulting with an immigration lawyer, they'll determine that there was a far easier or far faster pathway for them. So for that reason, it's very beneficial to consult with an immigration attorney early on so that, imagine if you if you did your own research and determined that EB5 was the suitable pathway for you, and you went as far as making an investment, only to then consult with an immigration lawyer and determine that there was a far easier pathway that was actually much quicker to obtain your desired end result. So for that reason, again, the first step should be to consult with an immigration lawyer. With that caveat, though, in terms of actual forms, the first form that gets filed in an EB5 case is the form I-526. And this is the petition that you're filing, the underlying immigrant petition that you're filing with USCIS to demonstrate that you satisfy the various EB5 requirements. An I-526 petition, as it's called, oftentimes encompasses hundreds of pages of documents regarding the investment. There will be a very detailed business plan that goes into this petition. It will include voluminous documentation regarding the source of funds of the EB5 investor and the pathway of those funds, those various requirements that we discussed earlier, and so on. So this would get submitted to USCIS. And upon approval of the I-526, the next step would be to file either an adjustment of status if the EB5 investor is lawfully present in the United States in some valid non-immigrant status, or to do immigrant visa processing if the investor is abroad. Now, there's a lot of details there. Something that I want to mention is that if your priority date is current, under the EB5 category, the specific EB5 category that you're applying under, then you could, and you're lawfully present in the United States in a valid non-immigrant status, you could potentially concurrently file your Form I-526 with your adjustment of status, which is the Form I-4825. There's a lot of details there to explore, but I just wanted to introduce that concept here, and you can ask about it in more detail when you're exploring EB5. But again, step one is to file the Form I-526. Then you can either do an adjustment of status or immigrant visa processing. Upon approval of your Form I-526, upon approval of your adjustment of status, or upon your entry to the United States with your immigrant visa, you are now a conditional lawful permanent resident. What that means is that you have a green card, you're a lawful permanent resident, but the duration of your lawful permanent residence, the duration of your green card is for 2 years. During that 2 year period is when you are required to create those 10 jobs for US workers. If you are able to create those jobs beforehand, that's wonderful. But you have this 2 year period of conditional permanent residence to create those 10 full time jobs. And before that 2 year period of conditional permanent residence expires, the next step is to file a Form I-829. The Form I-829 is the petition to remove the condition from your green card to become an unconditional lawful permanent resident, to essentially obtain the 10-year green card that is what is often thought of as an unconditional green card. So that is the gist of the application and filing process that's involved. And of course, after having your green card for a certain period of time, you can then apply to naturalize to become a US citizen if the various naturalization requirements are met.
Got it. Okay. Now let's talk about these businesses that usually often attract investments. You might have a lot of clients that are going the EB5 path, and they might have invested in different businesses, a variety of businesses. So although it's not possible to paint everything with the same brush, with that caveat in mind, can you give us an idea of what kind of businesses are these, right? Like, are they construction? What kind of businesses have your clients invested in the past?
So there's a tremendous degree of flexibility when it comes to direct. Are you asking about direct investments or regional centers?
Either ways,
So I've oftentimes seen regional center projects do, like I said, large scale hotel developments and resorts and sporting arenas and things of that nature. Large scale real estate developments is what I've often come across. And in the context of direct investments, you really have a tremendous degree of flexibility there in terms of opening up perhaps a restaurant of some kind. Or, I recently, not so recently, but I once had a client do an EB5 visa for a printer shop. He had a large scale shop, retail shop selling printers, like those big office printers. Um, and really, the potential for what type of business you want to do for EB5 is very, very, there's a tremendous degree of flexibility there. And I've also had an EB5 client that's done an EB5 investment based on a company that produces content. They're actually a service business that produces a large scale of content, written content, for their clientele. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways you can take this.
of all the types of funds that people can get in order to qualify for the EB5, uh, what type of sources qualify? I mean, you did mention about those a little bit before as well. Let's dive a little bit into those. But then, factually speaking, what's the most frequent source of funds that you've seen out there so far among, within your practice?
Absolutely. So there's such a vast array of lawful sources of funds, from accumulated savings from lawful employment earnings, selling off a property. Why don't I do this? I'll tell you some of the most common sources of funds that I see in my practice. So, for one, we just covered it. Let's say somebody's worked at a company for 20 years or been self employed for a number of years, And over those years, they were able to save in order for purposes of this EB5 investment. That is a very common source of funds for EB5. And so we'll park that as one of the common options. Another very common avenue for EB5 investment is, let's say somebody owns a home and they sell that home, or they own a piece of real estate and they sell that asset. Those funds in many cases can be used as the basis for the EB5 investment. Another very common source of funds is gift earnings. So a gift. So let's say somebody's parents want to gift them the EB5 funds. They can do that, and that actually happens to be a very, very common source of EB5 investment funds. Now, important point that I want to mention, all of these sources of funds have their own specific documentation that are needed to be used to support it. When you're attesting that a certain source is the actual source of the investment funds, as part of your I-526 petition, it's not just based on your statement that that's where the funds came from. It all has to be documented with voluminous documentation, from tax returns to bank statements to wire receipts. The documentation that goes into this is of utmost importance to an EB5 petition.
So basically, they want to know the source, but they also know how it has traveled to reach where it has reached, and make sure that everything over there is legal and right.
Correct. And that applies too if you're getting the funds as a gift. Sometimes people wonder, if I get the funds as a gift, does the person that issued that gift have to substantiate how they earned the funds? And the answer is yes. It doesn't. Issuing a gift does not overcome your duty to demonstrate the source of those funds. The gifting party has to substantiate how they earned the funds that they used that were the basis of the gift.
Got it. Got it. Michael, I think we covered a lot. Even for like a touch and go on the topic, this is quite a bit. It's enough for people to at least get started thinking about if this is a path for them or not. And obviously, if they want to move ahead in any immigration matter, they have to consult a licensed immigration attorney. That stands true regardless. But thanks so much for giving your time today and helping us dive a little bit deeper into what EB5 is, and just triggering people's thought process in that direction, at least. Anything else that you'd like to kind of throw out there that will help people?
I emphasized it so many times, but and you just reiterated it, but it is very, I can't overstate the importance of consulting with an attorney, because I do think that it really helps to clarify things for somebody, and oftentimes attorneys offer complimentary consultations. So I don't see a downside in doing it. Um, you might be here in this podcast very much set on EB5, only to find out that you would be a great candidate for EB1A, which is something that I know you know a tremendous deal about. And through EB1A, you could achieve a green card without having to make that investment. And then, but you might be in the complete opposite position, where your credentials don't rise to the level where an EB1A would be a viable case for you, or and EB5 actually, based on your unique circumstances, is the best avenue for you. So again, all of this usually is uncovered in an immigration consultation. So again, I reiterate my message to consult with an immigration attorney. But other than that, it was a pleasure to be here with you today. You had very wonderful questions, so thank you for that. And I look forward to hopefully joining you again sometime.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure this is one of many. We have a lot of different topics that we can dig into, and we sit on a casual conversation. I'm looking forward to having you, Michael, back on a lot more episodes of the Smart Immigrant Podcast. But thank you so much for this insightful episode. And until next time, see ya.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.